So without further ado, my name is Nevena Christosova. I'm a scientific project manager at EUC Europe, and I'm also communications assistant at the moment in our organization. I'm very happy that I have brilliant colleagues to co-host this workshop for you. That's Alba Hill from Eurofer, Edward Sliwinski from EFOST, Catherine Flynn, Luis Mayor, and Luminita Cholaku, from Maizeki Food. We are all collaborators on the FNS-cloud project, from which this Open Science Taster is one of the activities that we have. What do we have today in our agenda for our workshop? Very briefly, we're going to talk about open science. We're going to start with kind of a warm-up question for you. Then from our side, you're going to learn a little bit more of what is open data, what is open access publishing, how are they beneficial for society and for scientists, what they can do for you and your career, how you can exercise that kind of research activities. We'll give you plenty of tools that you can refer to later on. And we're gonna, once we have explored a little bit more in detail, we're gonna talk about open science a bit more in the end, and we will share even more resources with you.
Well, if society needed open science, why would it be? We could argue that it's a matter of democratization of knowledge, meaning that, in other words, giving knowledge back to society. We know that the vast majority of research are funded with public money, and it might seem only fair that these funds come back to society transformed in knowledge. We could also argue that sustainability is a main reason. If, for example, my colleague Verena, who is from another organization, works in the same research as I want to do, it could be a waste of my time, my money, and my resources that I do all the process that she has already done just because I don't have access to her data. Although I'm sure she will send me the data, but that's not the case. So yeah, it's a matter of using a proper way the resources we have. You name it, money, time, or public resources. The European Union, indeed, it's in this line, and the Commission has created the European Open Science Cloud, e-IEAS, which is a new environment for accessible knowledge, and we will talk about it later on. But what is open science? Because we are always talking about open science since we started, but we haven't given you a proper definition. Well, open science is not different from traditional science, first of all, and we definitely have no intention to discover the wheel. The idea is rather that once the wheel is discovered, we all know about the wheel, and we all have access to the wheel. In a more formal way, if you want, we could say that open science is a new approach to the scientific process based on cooperative and collaborative work, meaning that we have new ways to disseminate knowledge and to make use of the digital technologies, as well as collaborative tools to share this knowledge. The definition provided by Foster includes the notion of reducing, redistributing, and reproducing the information, and under which terms. But we will come back to this later on.
Welcome, all participants. I will show you a few slides that relate to open science. What you see in this slide is let's say the classic way of performing science, which means that it has a confirmatory approach, which is about establishing the truth or correctness of something. And it means that in this research approach, we start with a question or problem, and related to this, we formulate an hypothesis that we try to show or to tackle with the research that we do. So linked to the hypothesis, we formulate an analysis plan, and based on this plan, we start to collect data. And once we have the data, we analyze it according to the plan that we have made. And this is a very important step, because let's say, for instance, a statistical analysis plan is something that is needed to do the analysis in a reliable way and to have results that can be used and interpreted in a correct way. And after the interpretation of the results, they can be published, and the research results can be distributed. And then maybe we ourselves or others can have the possibility to replicate the results. This is the, let's say, the you could say the classic or the old-fashioned situation where scientists work all more or less in isolation. You work in your own research group. You get supervision from your supervisors or your professor. It is a bit isolated, and this way of working has several disadvantages and weaknesses, and it allows us that we cannot optimally benefit from new technological developments. Let's say the basic process that you have with the green circle has some sensitive spots that require improvement. An important aspect is that ideally research data are analyzed according to the statistical analysis plans. This is what I just said. Because beforehand, ideally, we formulate which parameters, which key parameter outcomes we have defined, so that we can check it when we have the data and the statistical analysis has been done. Because, a way is to just to pick fruits or cherries from the results. Say, okay, here we have a statistical significant difference, so this is really a very good outcome. But you can also calculate with statistics that when you have 20 parameters, that maybe always one will give a significant difference. So I think it's really important to analyze the results in a correct way. And then there are some other aspects that are important and that relate to the publishing of data. Furthermore, we have let's say an old complaint that it's only positive or exciting data that is accepted for publication. An old problem is that we have to pay to get the publication. And also something that is being discussed at the moment is that scientific careers are built on those quotation indices in high impact journals. And that is also a limited way to determine, let's say, how successful someone is in his or her work. And currently in open science, there are many aspects that included that bring the change following on the classic way of working, that let's say that give more possibilities, that bring, let's say, the openness to the science. Because the future, clearly that is open. It's not only because we have all those new technical tools, but also because the society is asking for it. That was explained earlier. And there are a large number of developments that go in this direction. Well, for open science, it is much more than only open access or allowing others to see or use your data, open data, that was also mentioned before. An aspect that is getting more and more attention is citizen science, where the public is used to collect data, and this also includes gamification of science. There are, let's say, new systems being developed to determine the reputation and awareness, and also to determine the output of scientists. A very important aspect is open collaboration and open innovation. And the positive aspect from this is that we use our collective intelligence. And a very simple example is when we would put ourselves in a separate room and lock everybody up and ask for input, then you get 9 individual inputs. But when you put the people together in a room, for sure you will have a better output because people challenge each other and they let's say, bring the topic further. Open access and open data is a very important development. For instance, to have open lab notebooks. You all know that when you do science, you have to fill in your notes in a notebook, in a lab book. That's the old-fashioned way on paper, but it can also be a digital notebook, and then it also can be open. So there are a lot of things that can be changed or improved or go into the direction of open science. And then there are also the more modern types of publications, like liquid publications, which means that they can be updated and improved anytime. So it's not a book that you publish, you print it, and that's it. No, it can be improved continuously. And then we have nano publications. This is when you're doing research and you find something really exciting, you can publish it right away. It's a much more shorter publication, but it allows you to be faster. And then you have the marginalia or open annotation. So when you have a paper which you want to publish and people have remarks on it, the remarks could be part of the publication. And it already happens with comments from reviewers that become part of the publication. And I think it's also a bit with letters to the editor that the scientists are writing to comment the results or the approach of a certain, let's say, scientific publication. Okay. I will give a short wrap up now of what we have discussed until now. I think it's very important to realize the definition of open science is that the research process becomes more transparent and collaborative. I think those two aspects are clearly linked here. When we did the first exercise, there was the word framework was mentioned. So I think it means that although we try to be more open and more collaborative, that we have to organize it in the right way. And also the word pluridisciplinary was mentioned. And I think that clearly links to the collaboration. And it's really nice to work with different disciplines, because I think new worlds open up when you work with people that are active in other disciplines. When we filled in information in the Padlet, I think there were some nice remarks about clear data sets, having understandable data sets that make it clear how research results were obtained, and for all data available to all. And there was also a remark about the open science communication, to have two-way communication when sharing scientific information, obtaining feedback from others. And then when you went out in groups, Anna Catherine, she gave feedback mainly from Iris, who was a bit hesitant to share. And one remark was that there were problems between countries, which of course can be the case. There can also be problems between partners in large research projects, especially when there is a possibility to get patents. And maybe data can be misused, but the opposite is also happening a lot of times, that people discover that their data was used in a new publication, and then in fact it means an extra quotation for them. I think that's what I want to say in wrap up. So now I give the word to the next speaker.
Thank you very much, Edward. So, as you have already mentioned, one of the main aspects of open science is open data. And we are all researchers, or you from the public, you are researchers, and you have produced data. And you already know that everything can be data, either if it refers to a subject, either if it refers to an object. And every quantitative or qualitative variable that you calculate, that you collect, that you measure can be data, no matter what the nature of the data is, if it's geographical, scientific, statistical, and so on. But in open data, we don't talk only about, in open science, we don't talk only about data, we talk about open data. And data becomes open when it is made available in a common machine-readable format, so that anyone can find it, access it, use it, and share it. And one important thing that we should all have in mind when we talk about open data is the GDPR, so the General Data Protection Regulation. And I'm pretty sure that you have heard about the GDPR, if not in your professional life, for sure in your personal life, because some years ago, when EU has started to simplify and harmonize the legislation, we as customers have received many emails from different companies, from the bank, or from different institutions, telling us that this has changed and that we need to approve the new General Data Protection Regulation. And the companies who did not change the General Data Protection Regulation, they received quite large fines. So GDPR represents a set of laws aimed to give the power to the individual to own their personal data. So it is very important for researchers to keep in mind this GDPR from the beginning of the research. When a researcher plans the work, the experiments, or the data collection, GDPR is very important. It's one of the main aspects related to open data, because in the end, when the researcher wants to publish the data, they want to make it open, it might be that this is not possible because of GDPR. So researchers must obtain informed consent for data collection, processing, sharing, and preservation. And if you are interested in this topic and you want to find out more, I will invite you to go to the My FNS-cloud Community of Practice, and there you will find an e-learning course dedicated to this topic. And we talk about open data, but how can we make our data open? And we like to say that open data live in a data repository. And what's a repository and how can you find the best repository for your data? You will find out in a very short video that I will invite you now to watch. So we have a 2-minute video that will explain all these questions. And in the video, a repository is called a warehouse. So let's watch it together. Nevena, can you? Thank you.
Les entrepôts permettent de stocker des données de recherche, d'y accéder et de les réutiliser. Il existe différentes catégories d'entrepôts. Les entrepôts propres à un éditeur, à une discipline, à une institution ou multidisciplinaires. À cela s'ajoutent d'autres particularités. Certains entrepôts acceptent tous les jeux de données, qu'ils soient ou non liés à des publications. D'autres n'acceptent que les données sous-jacentes à des publications. Des entrepôts mixtes reçoivent à la fois des publications scientifiques et des jeux de données liés ou pas aux publications déposées. On dit aussi de certains entrepôts qu'ils sont de confiance car ils répondent à des critères de qualité. Ces critères leur permettent d'être certifiés. De nombreux entrepôts ne sont pas certifiés, mais sont cependant largement reconnus par la communauté scientifique. Alors, comment trouver le bon entrepôt ? L'une des solutions est de passer par un annuaire qui recense des listes d'entrepôts. La recherche d'entrepôts pourra alors y être filtrée par critères. L'on peut distinguer différentes catégories d'annuaires: disciplinaires, multidisciplinaires et mixtes, qui contiennent à la fois des archives ouvertes et des entrepôts.
Thank you, Nevena. Can you share again the slides, please? Yeah. So on this slide, you have some examples, few examples from all the data repository that exist today, and they are classified on different topics. So you don't need to write anything. As Nevena said in the beginning, you'll receive this slide, and maybe some of this repository is already familiar for you. You have already used them. For the others, you can have a look later on after this workshop. And another important aspect of open data is the FAIR principle. So open data should also be fair, which means they need to be findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And one way to understand better the concept of open data and the FAIR principle is by telling you a story. So I will like to ask you to imagine a data set as a treasure chest, like in the old story. And you hear about this treasure chest that you really, really want to know because it's really, really useful for your work. So you start a treasure hunt. And the first thing that you need to know is where to find this treasure chest. Is it on an island? Is it in the mountain? Is it in a big city? Or is it hidden in a basement of a small hidden house somewhere? So you need not to know where to find it, but you need the exact location of it. You need, for example, a map, or in modern days, let's say you need a GPS location, so that you need that you know how to get to this treasure chest. And let's say that if these data are stored on a USB stick, and this stick is in a closet of a professor on an island in the middle of the ocean, you will not be able to find it, and you will not be able to use this data. So the first thing is to be able to find the treasure chest. And then you have to think if this treasure chest is accessible to you. Are there any obstacles that you need to face in order to have access to this treasure chest? Are there wild animals, sharks, or are the weather conditions not allowing you to access the treasure that you are hunting? And maybe you need to find the way to go to this specific place. You need a boat, you need a plane, or there are no connections that will allow you to access this. So coming back now to the data, maybe at this point you need to consider some ethical restrictions, some protocols that you need to pass before you can access the data, or maybe you need to fill a form in order to receive access to the data that you want to have. And after you know where it is, you know how to find it, you have access to it, you go there and you find yourself in front of a treasure chest, and you don't have the proper key to open it, or you don't have the PIN code that will open the treasure chest. So it can be that even if you have the data, you don't have the correct tool to operate with this data. It might be that the data has been collected with an equipment that it's out of use, or the software is not compatible with your laptop anymore. So even if you find it, you have access to it, you can't operate because the tool is not at your disposal. And even if you have done all these steps and you have put all your energy to find it, to go there, to find the correct tool to open the treasure chest, you find yourself now in front of a treasure chest full with old coins that are not in use anymore, and you can't use it because no one will accept these coins anymore. So are the data that you have found of any value for you? Can you use the data? Can you share the data? And can you somehow use this data in your further work in the way that when you make the data open, you really need to consider that the others can also use the data that you have produced and that you have to make, that you want to make open and to share with the others. So open does not mean fair. They are not synonymous, and it's important to make this distinction. For example, if the data are available on my website, they are open, but maybe you are not able to find it. Or if you find it, you need my permission to access it. And if you access it, you don't have the software to read the data. Or maybe there is a license which does not allow you to use the data in the end. So open is not fair, and fair is not open. Sometimes they are the same, but this is not necessarily the case. And this is something that I would really like for you to remember after the workshop today. When you try to make your data open, be sure that they respect the FAIR principles.
We have already said open science and open data doesn't mean anarchic science or anarchic data. You may recall that at the beginning, when we were talking about what open science is, I told you about the terms under which you can use that data. These terms are actually called license. You may know for sure the more famous licenses are the Creative Commons ones. If you want to license your work, your research, your data, you might be interested in using these because they are indeed easy to use, widely known, flexible, with many options, easily read by machines and humans. Bear in mind that every time you use your data from a third party, it will depend on the license, but 99% of the cases, you will have to cite it and to say this data comes from this person under this license. As we said, Creative Commons has multiple kind of licenses, and they are fully aware of that. And because of this, they have created a fantastic tool we use a lot. It's called License Selector Tool, we recommend you to choose the license that will adapt to your preferences. It consists on few questions, and they will tell, okay, this license is the most appropriate for you. In FNS-cloud, we are also preparing an online course on licenses in case you are interested, but it's not online yet. And since I want to save your time, I will tell you something I wish someone had told me about licensing in my 20s. In American English, both license, noun, and verb are written with an S. But the Brits, however, we know they like it different. So they make the difference between noun with the C and S, and the verb with the S. This would have saved me a lot of time correcting all the documents I wrote on licenses. So yeah, I hope you find it useful indeed. Now I think we can move on to open access and subscription-based publishing. Thank you.
Yeah, I think now you can see me, or is it working? Yeah. Okay, so thank you, Alba. And at this point, I would like to introduce you the topic of open publishing. And it is very important to differentiate between open access and subscription-based publishing. And one of the differences, or maybe the main difference, lies in who pays the cost of publishing. In a subscription-based publishing, researchers publish for free most of the time, but reading is limited to those who had paid for a single article view or for a subscription to a journal, which often is the institution, the university, the company, and so on. However, the general public, journalists, teachers, and others, cannot read the article if they do not pay. In an open access publishing, the author is the one who pays the cost of publishing. There is this tax called article processing charge, shortened APC, as you see it in the slide. But anyone interested can read the article free of charge. And the second difference between open access and subscription-based publishing, it refers to the ability to use the data in the publication. In the subscription-based publishing, once the author publishes their work, the copyright is transferred to the publisher, and anyone who wants to read or who wants to use the data in the publication has to ask permission from the publisher and not from the author. Open science articles include open licenses, as you have heard before, like the Creative Commons licenses, which allow the use of the data in the publication for different purposes depending on the type of the license that you choose. Therefore, we see that in a subscription-based publishing, both the author and the reader have some disadvantages. First, because the reader has to pay if he wants to read the published work, and this is restricted to those who afford to pay the costs. Therefore, the audience for the publication is low, and the author will probably not get as many citations as he wants. And second, because the subscription-based publishing gives the copyright to the publisher. Therefore, the author who has produced the data, it's not the owner of the data. He can't share the data with the colleagues, with the researchers, because the data don't belong to the author anymore. And a common misconception about open access publishing is that it can be done only in open access journal. And actually, there are several routes to make your publication open, and we have called them the rainbow of roads to open access. And the first one is the diamond or the platinum route. And here, open access journals allow immediate access to the content of the journal without any payment made by the author or by the reader, because all the costs are covered by different sponsoring organizations. The second route is called the golden open access route. And here, the paper is made freely available on the publisher website immediately on publication after the APC tax, so the tax that I was telling you before, was paid. And normally this is paid by the institute or by the funder of the research. There is also a traditional subscription-based route where the author can choose to make the data and the publication open by paying or not the APC tax. And this route is called hybrid open access path. The next one is the green path, where the author uploads a copy of the accepted manuscript to an open science repository. The author accepted manuscript, probably you know what it is. It is the version that has been gone through the peer review process, but has not been copy edited or typeset by the publisher. So the paper can become open, so freely available once it was deposited on this repository or after a period of embargo period set up by the publisher. And the last route of publication is the black path, where the author shares openly an electronic version of the subscription-based publication without the authorization of the publisher, who is now the owner of the copyright. This is not legal, and it's not normally the way to go. Which road you should choose is, of course, your decision, your coordinators, your institution, and it depends on the possibilities. If there is a budget for publication, maybe if there is a project who will pay for this publication. And it depends also on the priority. Are you aiming for a high impact factor? Do you want your research to be accessible to everyone, or you want to have lots of citation? There are several factors that need to be taken into account, but it's good for you to know that you have different options to choose from.
Thank you, Luminita. So as a quick wrap-up of on open publishing, we have seen that there are the wide range of open publishing options. So choose the better fit for you and your possibilities and expectations. Preprints are a good tool to make your research open, especially before a future peer review publication, as we saw, and can save you some time. And as an attendee pointed out, it might be useful also to review your content before trying to publish in a subscription-based journal. Open access publications are also typically more cited than pay-for-access publication, and this makes sense because if they are open access, people usually have more access to this, especially the students, and they reach to a broader audience naturally than other publications. Regarding the bigger obstacles, as you pointed, we have the harmonization. The bigger obstacle, about publishing is that we don't know how to do it, the lack of knowledge, that we are afraid of what people will do with our data, and also the administrative barriers. But for that, we want to point out that you have licenses, as we already said, that said exactly under which terms your data can be used. And this is very useful to say, okay, you can do this and this and this with my data, but nothing else. And in the case study, as we said, the main concerns are that we are not used of the quality of the journals, and that whether they can be trusted or not, more than conventional subscription-based journals. And I think with this, we finish the open publishing, and I will give the floor to my colleague. Thank you.
Thank you, Alba. I want to share with just a couple of words with you something about e-IEAS. e-IEAS is the pet name of the European Open Science Cloud. It's the mega cloud, as we like to call it. e-IEAS is basically the flagship activity of the European Commission. It was initiated in 2015 under the Horizon 2020 funding program, and is now under the new program that just started, Horizon Europe. So the aim of EOSC is to develop infrastructure with services and different tools that users can use to promote their open science practices. So that infrastructure that EOSC represents is basically built by aggregating, as I said, services, but from different service providers. As you can imagine, there isn't a single service provider, especially when we talk about services related to science, research, development, and innovation that can provide all the services needed for that kind of activities. So what EOSC did is aggregate services from different providers following the so-called systems approach. And actually what you see on your screens now from the slide is a screenshot from the EOSC portal where all those databases and different services are aggregated. It's very interesting because currently it integrates more than 50 communities and infrastructures, and it has more than 170 providers that are part of the EOSC family, so to speak. And this number is only set to grow because, as I mentioned, the European program Horizon Europe is just starting, and there's already an indication that plenty of new services and communities will become part of EOSC as well. Just to give you an example of what kind of services or communities are part of EOSC, FNS-cloud, which we are part of, obviously, and I'm going to share just a couple of sentences about what FNS-cloud is in a minute. There's also the Blue Cloud, which is about marine research and the blue economy. There's also the community called Be Open, which is about research in transportation and effective and green transports. There's also Digital Health Europe, and so many more that right now I can't even begin to to tell you all about them. But if you go to the EOSC website, you can explore all of those services, databases, and tools that you can potentially use and even contribute to further developing with your own research. And because I promised to tell you a little bit about FNS-cloud, we're one of the communities that are now becoming part of EOSC. We're specifically the food nutrition security. That's what FNS stands for. And thanks to this food nutrition security cloud, part of those services is a workshop like this where we try and develop people's knowledge and skills into key issues like open science and fair science and how they can further expand their capacities in doing them. FNS-cloud specifically is working to enhance the management of food nutrition security data sets, access to different services, much like the EOSC, the mega cloud is, again, to expand and build on different skills and the confidence, especially in researchers, because as we saw today, there's still a lot of uncertainty of what can be done and what should be done and how it can be done as part of open science. And with FNS-cloud, we want to help develop the confidence to do so and to engage in open science activities. And that pretty much brings us to the end of this workshop. I would like to thank you for your contribution, especially the ones who were able to stick around and participate in the breakout rooms and the discussions. We have time for some questions. I would like to also thank my co-hosts, Catherine, Luis, Luminita, Edward, and Alba. It's a great pleasure to host this workshop with you. And I hope that you learned something new today and that you only leave this workshop with the desire to learn and do more about open science.